guys are all part of fast-growing organisations. But I think obviously the first thing to do is, can you introduce yourselves and introduce the organisations that you represent? We'll go this way just for ease.
Hi, I'm Carl Furman, look after procurement at Monzo. We are, I think, the fastest growing digital bank in the UK, about 15 million customers, personal banking, about 1 million business banking customers, and currently expanding into the EU. We've probably the last 3 years since I've been there, gone from 7 million to 15, so quite rapid growth in the UK. I think we've overtaken Barclays now, which is quite nice. So we're no longer the challenger bank. We're overtaking those incumbents. And I've been 3 years in procurement, and it's was the first procurement hire, so it's been an interesting journey.
Hi again. I manage the procurement and third-party risk team at Motability. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that we are the biggest buyer of cars in the UK. So that just talks to our scale. So if you imagine when new cars are registered in April, I think it is, and September, we represent 20% of that market share. And to my point earlier, this is why we're trying to use our scale for good to drive accessibility and actually lead in this space.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Chris Wilson, so I'm the Procurement Director at Vitality. So Vitality are the health and life insurers. You may have seen some branding at some sporting events. It's rather shockingly pink. Vitality has 2 million customers in the UK, but has also got partner markets in the US, in Asia, and in South Africa too. So that's us.
Sorry, it's a bit clunky. So, as I said, you're really fast-growing organisations, and I want to get a little bit of flavour of how that makes your procurement life different and challenging, more challenging, perhaps than other organisations. So, if you can give us a little bit of flavour of the procurement department and how that works.
Yeah, I think for us the biggest challenge at the moment is we're a well-known brand in the UK to a certain extent, but as we expand into Ireland and now Spain and other countries in the EU in short order, no one's ever heard of us. And so trying to leverage a combination of global relationships where we can do, but also find local providers is providing us with a new challenge, and just kind of globalizing the company, if that's a word, I think is something that's a sort of a C-suite challenge.
So the procurement team at Motability, there's 7 of us. Motability is a UK-owned business, so that's our focus, the UK market. We have procurement business partners, we have a third-party risk manager and a procurement analyst. So in terms of structure, we very much adopted the business partner model. So if we think about other departments, you've got finance BPs, sustainability BPs, risk BPs, HR BPs. And so I guess we wanted to join that trend, but also make it easier for the business, because if we think about it, all BPs are serving the same customer set, and so it's important that we collaborate effectively to better serve them. What else to say? Well, I've kind of covered it already, so thank you.
I'm going to copy Harinder's answer, basically, because we've done procurement business partners too. So, yeah, okay, right. So we're all doing the right thing, I think, right?
Or we're doing the wrong thing.
Yes. So we've got, within our team, it's grown quite significantly over the past few years. So I think if you go back to just pre-COVID, we had 8 of us in the team. We've now got 20. Some of that team is based in South Africa. And going back to kind of the challenge, I mean, I don't know how many South Africans there are in the room, hopefully not too many, but they're quite demanding. So our company is South African run. This isn't being recorded, is it? But yeah, so that's the challenge. I mean, but what it means is it's a great environment. It means we're constantly pushing forward. We're constantly wanting the next thing, which means our procurement team is in hugely high demand, which is exactly where you want to be, because it means that we are way too busy, but we can also demonstrate the value at the same time.
So can we talk a little bit more about the challenges you're actually facing today and how you find the industry actually responding and helping you? So yeah, you've got under huge demand, got to answer to the board, but you've got to actually bring your team of service providers and partners on the journey with you. What's that journey like, and what are you loving about it, and what are you not loving quite so much about it at the moment?
All of us again, yeah?
Yeah, do you want to go?
Sure. Oh,
Do you want me to go? Yeah, okay. So we have what's happened recently, so Vitality, we were just a UK organisation, but as I've said, we're South African born, so there's a company called Discovery, which has been running for 30 years, which is the largest insurer in Africa. So we then set up like partner markets across the globe. So that's working with existing insurers and then adding the Vitality benefits on top of that. So that's rewarding you for participating in sport, steps, basically being healthier. Now, our UK team since January is now a global team, so looking after procurement across the globe. Now, I've got to be really careful what I say. Our ExCo members obviously went, oh, we're amalgamating, we can make efficiencies, let's make some savings. So they've gone round and they've said that to us, and they're expecting, well, we've got 2 Salesforce contracts, merge them, shave 20%. Okay, right, let's go for that. So we've attempted to do that, but obviously met with significant resistance when we're doing that, because you go and you say, your one agreement is coming to an end in April, but the other one's got 3 years to run. And salespeople or service providers want to protect their revenue stream. So I think we've tried to approach it in the right way, but we're coming with a lot of resistance. And then us turning around to our executive committee and our board members and saying, well, the savings aren't there. I mean, we're doing all we can, and we're adding value, lots of value, but it's not quite there as we hoped it would be. So what we're having to do is, as good procurement people would do, is add more levers into there. So do significantly more market reviews, RFPs, etc., than we were doing previously to create that environment to get the best deals from an international point of view.
Thank you. And savings was mentioned, and thinking about our journey, this is where we started, and it's often a thought process where procurement is there to deliver savings. Now, we all know that as a profession we're here to deliver more than that, but that's I guess a myth in the eyes of others that we need to kind of crack and challenge, because savings shouldn't be the only KPI. We measure back to the business. So in the early years, this is what we tried to counteract and challenge through delivery of other things, such as, well, how do we measure our key suppliers, and how are we driving innovation, and where can we evidence it? And these are some of the things that we've been working on of late. It'd be interesting to see how AI changes the dynamic of the expectation of the business wants us to deliver better outcomes faster, whilst maintaining governance, whilst maintaining accountability. And I guess how AI can support that will be interesting for all of us, but that's only the journey we're on at the moment.
I think that the difference for us probably is that savings haven't been a focus at Monzo. It's all been about enabling the business to grow and do things faster. There's kind of the Google mindset of don't do anything that would slow an engineer down. We kind of embody that. Although we're no longer really a startup, we still have that startup mentality, and actually getting the business to remember, one, we're a regulated bank and you can't just go and buy stuff because it'll make you better. But two, come through us and we can actually, if we're involved earlier, help you progress through that process is something that we're starting to get better at. But again, as a 11-year-old company with a 2.5-year-old procurement function, we're still very much on that journey.
Okay, so I was asking a little bit about what your challenges are. What are your main challenges today in getting that done?
I think finding the right companies who can augment our existing supply base in these new locations, I think is challenging. We don't have people outside of the UK in these countries from a procurement perspective. So whilst we have, the kind of go-to-market folk in those regions, and we have engineers and things like that, we need suppliers that we can learn from rather than suppliers we have to teach. And I think finding those and identifying those in new markets is the immediate challenge to supercharge EU expansion.
Part of our ethos in procurement is helping the business achieve their outcomes through good procurement practice and the way we operate. And the business is arguably transforming more than ever. So just to give you a flavour for Motability, we buy cars, we own the assets, we depreciate it. And the all-encompassing lease for a customer includes insurance, MOT, servicing, breakdown, tyres, everything to keep it a worry-free proposition for customers. What we're looking at the moment is a charging project, which effectively means that how can our disabled customers charge their EV vehicles, given that there's a national drive towards EVs at the moment. And what we need to think about all the scenarios, because if we think about disabled customers, they may have impairments, for example, which means they can't actually physically they're not able to charge the vehicle because these charges are quite heavy or the cable's not long enough. And so we've got to think about, well, how do we think differently and innovate and lead in the market to address some of these challenges for these customers? Because if we don't, they're going to get left behind. And we can't allow that to happen as Motability. And this is separately why we have a public affairs company that works very close with government now to influence government policy, for example. But just to come back to the question, the business is on a big transformation around EVs, how we help customers charge. But what does that mean for us commercially? So, for example, if we're installing chargers, what does that mean in terms of energy revenue? Some providers are saying they'll install the chargers for free, but they keep the revenue share. Others are saying we can do a bit of a flex. And so the business is on a journey of thinking differently. And it's never had to go down that path in energy before. So therefore, we're having to think differently as well and understand where procurement plays its part within that.
Okay, to answer the question, the biggest challenge is time, always in our organisation, always has been because of the fast pace that it moves at. So it's time, and Steve, who's a colleague of mine who's here from Vitality, will know that too well. He's looks quite tired because it's constant, isn't it? So it's the constant demands, but then going out to service providers, we need to work with the right service providers who can work with those demands, who can be agile. And so we're finding quite a lot is that it's actually giving us greater emphasis to work with our existing service provider base, which is where we want to be. I don't want to be a procurement person running tenders all the time. I want to be investing in our existing service providers. But they then have to be continuously improving. They have to be innovating. They have to be working with AI and developing things at a rapid pace. So we find that we're going out to a lot of service providers at the moment and challenging them and things. And I don't know if that's the right. I think it should be a two-way conversation. At the moment, there's a few that are coming to us, and that's brilliant, and we're fully on board with them, and we go on that journey. There's a few who are having to push a lot harder than I thought we were going to, and that then raises questions that are they the partner of choice going forward?
Thank you. So that kind of brings on to what Hemant was talking about and the approach to agile sourcing, and then obviously what Rakesh was talking about, and that's, you know, the different pricing models. How are you seeing your commercial models changing, and how is the industry responding for Monzo?
I think when it comes to services, we are very output focused. We don't do anything really sort of T&M at the moment in professional services and that side of space. It's very much we will pay based on the value of an outcome, we'll pay on the success of that. It's still, I think, with our kind of customer outsourced providers, it's still that traditional kind of productive hour type cost, but we're seeing that be disrupted as well. And I think that is not long for this world in our industry, because we're seeing agentic AI that we've rolled out as a first line customer operations assistant, where we are actually on a commercial model which is really focused on resolution rather than the time it takes to get to resolution. And I think that's where the difference in mindset is changing for us as an organisation.
Do you want to expand on that? How easy was it
Sure.
for you to be able to get service providers responding in that way? And what was the discussion and the to and froing?
Well, this is focused more on, I would call it like the big four and the level below. So that kind of finance professional services outfit. I think the main thing was competition, was to let them know that they wouldn't be able to talk to anyone in our company and get to the point of a contract without delivering a fixed price quote and without that quote going out to market. We're not there yet, right? These companies are built on a model which is personal relationships and nice dinners and fine wine and all that sort of fun stuff. So it's a journey, but we've set the foundations. If you want to be part of the panel and you want access to opportunity, there's a quid pro quo here. And you do have to tell us who you're talking to, and we will put this out in a competitive way. And if you back yourselves to be the best company, not necessarily just on price, but on overall value, then you shouldn't be scared of that. If they're scared of that, then they're trying to put a moat up around shoddy surface at an expensive price, right?
Oh, thank you. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, very, very similar situation. I guess in terms of commercial models, it is, well, apart from the innovative example I just gave, it is quite traditional in the sense of time and materials, fixed price, but there's value in getting those things right. So for example, if you've got two quotes on the table, T&M, fixed price, it's taken the stakeholders through the journey of the merits of both of them and the premium that you might pay on a fixed price against T&M. But at the moment, the business prefers certainty, so they prefer fixed price generally with our professional services, which means we then have to understand what are the assumptions being made on the supplier side, because that's where it can go wrong.
I remember a really good conversation years ago. We were going through a big renegotiation with our media agency, and we were looking at a risk reward based contract. And we were having conversations. Then we presented it to our CEO at the time, and he said, if they're good, pay them more, which was like, oh, it was the most worrying thing I've ever heard as a procurement person. But actually it worked. And so we started to introduce more risk and reward based contracts across the board. Now, it doesn't work for everything. And I think like some of the examples you've given, yeah, we're on T&M basis. But there are some ones out there. So it's worth exploring with the suppliers about whether they be into that. Some doesn't mean anything to them. They just do the minimum amount they can do, get that amount, and then they're fine with it. Others will go to the nth degree, and they're the partners we want to be working with to go and get that reward, and then we pay that reward, and it works supremely well. So we are trying to implement it more and more, but also the challenge is it takes more management to actually to see how they're performing against everything, to check on it, to give the feedback, etc. So it does require a lot of investment.
One just thing to add on that, I think when we look at commercial models, we take it probably a step back from that and talk about commercial principles in our team. And we've essentially got three. So there's simplicity, certainty, and scalability. And if actually the commercial model, as long as it ticks those three boxes, we're kind of open to it. But we put the challenge back to the suppliers quite often to find a model, whether it's an outsource, a co-source, or a one-time kind of project to meet those criteria. And if they can, then we'll entertain it.
Okay, one last question from me, and then we'll go to the floor. So you've both mentioned AI. You've talked about changing models. How are you buying AI? What's actually happening? Are you renegotiating contracts because of the productivity gains that you're seeing coming through AI? And what's your vision for where it might be going? It's a massive question.
Yeah, no easy answer. I suppose it's a mixture. I mean, if you're talking about buying AI, we are, I think, very fortunate not to have any Microsoft in our organisation, so no Copilot for us. We have Gemini, we have Claude, we have ChatGPT Enterprise. It's freely available to all of our 5,000 employees, and they can experiment to their heart's content at the moment. I'm sure cost control will come at some point in time, but again, we are not as worried about kind of saving the money. We are focused on innovating in that space. When it comes to that mindset for our suppliers, we're talking to a number of firms. I mean, there's an example recently where we were speaking to a law firm about them having to put their rates up because the cost of their people has risen. And the challenge back was, well, why aren't you augmenting that with AI? Law is a great example where actually there are huge gains to be made. And so we put that challenge back to them. It was like, don't increase your cost base and therefore increase your cost to us, increase your efficiency and maintain your profit margins, because we don't want to pay more for your inefficiencies. And so I think that's where the challenge is going back to our supply chain now to say, if we are a very AI forward organization, our new CEO is from Google and she's got that whole kind of tech mindset. So it's part of our journey in the way we're going. And if we can't find providers that are going to be with us on that journey and aren't going to see AI as an opportunity rather than a threat, then frankly, they're not the right providers for us.
I'm not seeing supplier pricing come down because of AI, but we have to remember what AI is. It's a feature. It's a feature to be used. It doesn't guarantee better outcomes. It's how you use it. And so if suppliers aren't using it correctly to drive better outcomes and drive that efficiency, we can't reasonably expect the pricing to come down. So therefore, that's their challenge and their opportunity at the same time. And that's probably where they can differentiate ahead of their peers.
We've got an interesting take on it at the moment, and it's not led by procurement, it's led by our AI enablement teams and our like chief operations and technology officer, in that we're all using Copilot. We've got Claude to a varying degree. There's a few Gemini, etc. I like your organisation. But what we're finding is that a lot of these service providers are trying to implement AI, and we're being very cautious about it because we don't know what the costs. We know what the costs will be now, but we don't know what the costs will be in a year, 2 years, 3 years of the tokenization and the utilization of it. So we're having to go through several governance steps before approving any of this AI and then put limitations on it. So it feels like really negative, but at the same time, it's just thinking of the future and where these things go. We're wanting people to have efficiency. We're wanting people to adopt AI, but we're also going, whoa. We don't want it employed in every single kind of platform or system we've got, because we've got our own AI that we'd then like to adopt to utilize those. I mean, one thing we are looking at is all of those systems that have the business intelligence add-on that you pay 100K for a year. We're looking to remove as much of that as possible because we're trying to get the data from the systems ourselves because Claude's just magnificent, right? So what you can do with that yourselves in your own way rather than having to adopt a systems kind of user experience is much better. So that's one thing we are doing.
Okay. Right. Do we have any questions from the floor?
Hi. Thank you for taking my question. I'm going to talk about sustainability or ask a question about sustainability in AI. With AI coming more and more in, how are you as procurement and obviously a business measuring the impact on the sustainability of AI and the carbon footprint? And I think you mentioned net zero. How are you measuring that and the impact to your business and your sustainability principles?
I'll probably give the honest, kind of unpolished answer, and you can tell us what B Corps do. We are struggling to understand the impact of it at the moment. It's something that we've got a very small and new sustainability team, and they are working on that. We are working with the likes of Google and AWS. We're an entirely cloud-based organisation, so that's where our kind of emissions sit more generally as an organisation. And so we are working with them to understand and quantify that, but it is incredibly difficult at the moment. So we are at the start of that journey, but we've got no granularity in terms of what the emissions impact is yet. We hope to in the next sort of reporting cycle, so by this time next year.
Yep, likewise. And also you could argue the same for some of the cloud providers. So for example, AWS via the console, you should be able to see the carbon calculator. Challenge is it's not accurate. So if you can't rely on that, how can you rely on anything else that comes from the AI providers? What I would love to see is every time you prompt an AI tool, before it actually runs the process, it could say, before you click go ahead, here's the cost of the environment and here's the cost of the company. So if we think about the cat examples and all the other ones where actually it's probably beyond acceptable use, we should be clear as users what our responsibility is on running the right prompts for the business in line with acceptable use policy and what the cost is to the environment. So I think that's probably an opportunity for those providers. That way we can get the reporting.
I don't think I've got much more to add. I love that idea. I think that's brilliant. I'd also like to inherit that idea for any time someone wants to bring on a new supplier and how much time it's going to take to actually bring them on board and the cost to my sanity. No, we've got a great sustainability team that's been in place for 3 or 4 years. They measure our Scope 3 emissions. We have got some, I think it's rudimentary data because it's based on the data that comes out of the categorization of spend and then the expenditure against that, so for the carbon emissions factor, but we do have further detail. And so when we are deploying AI tools, there is some data on it, but I still don't think it's good enough, basically.
So this question is for all three of you. On a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is, let's say, crawl, and 5 is run, crawl, walk, run. So what do you think your organization's maturity of AI deployment is?
I don't think we're quite there. I think I'd go.
Yeah.
I think we're slightly behind on it. Honestly, I mean, we're trying to do everything we absolutely can, but I think 3. I think my challenge with it all is that everything I see is people using it on an individual basis. For personal assistant, for soundboarding, etc., which is brilliant, and we're seeing the outputs of that, which is great. But I don't see that adoption. I mean, Carl's spoken about it at Monzo, and it seems fantastic. But I don't see that adoption that is supporting a sub-team or an entire process or a whole operation from Vitality's point of view.
Right, we're nearly at time, but I've got the killer question for you, and that is I've got a question at the back. Sorry, Terry. I'll give it to you in a minute. Do you want to come up, and then I don't have to run all the way down there?
All right, I'll shout. Save you running down with the mic. Shamelessly self-motivated question here, but I think it was last year's GSA conference we talked about the transition of software contracts from being subscription or user-based to more outcome-based. So the whole services software movement, where you're paying for outcomes and work done by software rather than the number of people using it or the amount of subscribers you've got. To what degree are you guys seeing those manifesting things that you're buying and how you're buying software?
Not seeing much of that from our software providers. I think because we're growing so rapidly on a headcount basis, they're quite happy with a consumption-based model. So we haven't had many of those forthcoming suppliers, but I'd love to see more of it, definitely. I think we see it more in the, if I think about our cloud infrastructure rather than the kind of, like business service SaaS providers, we see a bit more of that, and then more of the kind of the commercial, like kind of customer facing conversations, like making tax digital is a good example. We partnered, like Sage white label our SME solution for that. That wasn't done on a cost per user, that was done actually on a more of an output type pricing model. So pockets of it, but we'd love to see more.
Yeah, I agree, and that could be a really good differentiator for suppliers. There's a famous quote from James Caan from Dragon's Den, which I always quote. Alice has probably heard of it 100 times. Observe the masses and do the opposite. So if there's a vendor out there that can differentiate themselves commercially, we would welcome it in procurement. I just wonder if they may have challenges around revenue recognition and ARR and trying to get around that if outcomes aren't fixed, but it's definitely worth thinking about.
Yeah, we don't see enough. We'd like to see more. That's it.
That might well be the question I wanted to ask, and that was, if you had one piece of advice to any of the service providers or advisors in the room that wanted to work with you, what would it be? What do you want to see the industry do differently?
I'd love to see people come to us and sell AI as a problem that they can solve rather than a solution looking for a problem. I think the amount of suppliers that reach out to me who are all of a sudden .ai. I mean, there's a classic example, right, with the that shoe company in the US that tripled their valuation overnight because they decided they weren't in the shoe game anymore, they're in the AI game. Like, it's quite transparently obvious when companies do that. So if you can come and solve a real business problem and you can understand, like we talk about suppliers that we can learn from, other suppliers we have to teach, come to us and help us learn, and that will massively, whether that's AI or anything else, that will be what differentiates you.
There's something in the procurement world called supplier relationship management, and if you imagine this, it's where a buyer and a supplier and organisation will sit down and have quarterly service review meetings and that kind of nature. And in that, you might talk about open tickets, major incidents, continuous improvement, and so on. Part of that discussion might be, hey supplier, how can we encourage you to be more innovative to better support our outcomes? Or, hey supplier, what are you doing differently with your other customers that we can benefit from? And it's that market insight intelligence that we're striving for, because I think this is what sometimes just seems on our shoulders all the time in procurement, where we are that gap, that bridge between the supply world and the rest of the organisation. I mentioned earlier that we surveyed the exec and senior leaders, and one of the things they really want to see from us was more innovation scouting and looking for innovative suppliers out there in the market. And I think we need to do more of it, but we would love to hear more from suppliers on that basis.
It's really hard going last each time. Why did I sit here? It's the same. It's ideas generation, but collaborative idea generation. Not just someone coming and pitching something that they've already got and they sell to another customer and they think it could work for us. It's coming to us and understanding our business a bit more, having those collaborative conversations with supplier managers, and then understanding what we can do differently and then working collaboratively on it. So a service review shouldn't just be about what's been done. It's about what the future looks like and how we can create a better working relationship and then future engagement.
Any final words from any of you before we wrap on anything?
I'm not going to get in the way of the coffee break.
We're all good?
Something on sustainability. So I mentioned earlier that Motability buys thousands of cars every year, the biggest buyer of cars in the UK. We don't just have billions of pounds sitting around to buy these cars. So the way we fund the purchase of these cars is by going out to the bond market. I'll explain why I'm talking about this in a sec. And when we go out to the bond market and look at ESG-linked bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, investors are asking us, well, provide evidence that you're going to be around in the next 30 years to pay this fixed income loan back to us. And if we're going to give you better terms via ESG-linked bonds, evidence to us that you care about sustainability, the planet, what are you doing to go from good to great, great to excellence? Are you measuring your scope 1, 2, 3 emissions? How accurate is the data? And this is partly why we've been on the B Corp journey. And this is where I think sustainability is a commercial differentiator for us, because our investors now expect it. I just wanted to add that, because sometimes we all face the challenge. Well, what is the business value for caring about sustainability? We know in our hearts, think about our families, we want this world to be a better place as we grow up, as companies mature over the long term. But why should we care? And how do you sell it? And how do you link sustainability to commerciality? So that was just one example I wanted to share, but there's probably many more to share as well.
Sorry. And just on that topic, obviously the world has changed, and ESG was a really big topic a couple of years back, and lots of service providers were really selling on their sustainability personas. Has that disappeared, or is that still continuing? And how important is it that they're sustainable, that they've got strong sustainability agendas?
It hasn't really affected us. I think I have to say, coincidentally, for the benefit of my press team, that this is not a result of Trump being in office, but we did pull out from the US at the beginning of this year. So I think companies that are more US focused tend to have more of an issue with this. We're focused in the EU, and it's, we're under, if not just from the UK, now the EU regulation on sustainability is a lot heavier, so we're getting to grips with that, and so it's more of a focus for us, more of a focus for our supply chain, and we're pursuing it more aggressively than we have been, I would say.
Okay, good.
I guess one more other thing I can add to that example is the way sustainability is also perceived within Motability is it's no longer a sustainability risk, it's a commercial risk, in the sense of, if you think what's happening around the world, wildfires, tropical storms, flooding, and if you're a manufacturing company and you've got sites on flight paths, there is risks all over, and you can put metrics around those assets, risk of assets, sustainability risk of assets, and if something was to happen, that's a sustainability risk. There's assets at risk, there's revenue at risk, and again, that's how we can think about driving the sustainability agenda internally to link it to business risk. One thing we're fortunate of in Motability is the procurement team sits within the business risks function as part of finance, and so we get sight of how the business thinks about enterprise risk, and thinking about the top 10 risks that are published by the Business Continuity Index every year. And this is where we think about bridging the gap. So you've got enterprise risk management, and you've got third-party risk management, and how does that top-down, bottom-up join together to support the sustainability agenda?
Thank you. I think it's still very prominent. We're trying to do as much as we possibly can to make sure it's still part of the conversations that are going forward. And so our sustainability team, I think, was put into place 3 or 4 years ago. And so we're just continuing on that journey with them. So it's still part of it. But obviously, I know it's the other hot topic, AI, but then you end up having the first conversation about AI rather than the first conversation about sustainability. So it's just dropped slightly down the pecking order. And as the gentleman over there asked the question, I mean, they are, they're competing against each other, I suppose.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining me. I'm sure you are going to get mobbed in the coffee break, so be prepared. I'm sure everyone's going to ask loads of questions about how to enter your supply chains. So anyway, thank you very much to Carl, Harinder and Chris. Thank you.